Hey there, you're watching Bare Knuckle Binder. This is just a really quick little video to go over some window stuff. I originally started this channel with doing the window glass in the KBK series of trucks, and there's been a few questions popping up, and I'm actually in the middle of putting a window in a KB2 right now, and it has brought up a few points that I'd like to cover. Hopefully this will help somebody. So first off, the regulators and the carriers in the KKB series of trucks, the light line and the heavy duty trucks, regulators are exactly the same. The carriers are basically the same, but in the larger trucks, they're longer. In this KB2 that I'm working on right now, I took the windows out of it years ago. I can't remember why, but it was something I was always going to get back to, but you know how those projects go. So I ended up selling the carriers to a buddy who was trying to finish his project, and I realized I don't have any more the right size for this truck. So what I did have is I had some spare larger ones for the larger trucks that I had sitting around. I had, you know, pulled out of a junkyard at some point. And so I made them work by lobbing like 1.25 inches off at each end. Now, if you're gonna do this, you want to make sure that it's as long as possible, but yet you still have enough clearance on the window channels, or else it'll bind. You don't want that. Speaking of binding, one of the main causes that I've seen with this series of trucks with the windows going up and down and stopping and catching, you know, and they're just not, you know, having to help them up and down, is if these channels, the keyhole and the channel, if these are dirty, have any rust or anything on them, they're gonna catch. So you want to get them clean as you can, and you want to grease them. And it doesn't really matter what grease you use. Maybe even thicker stuff would be better. In the original video, I know I used white lithium grease because I had it on hand. But right now, the closest thing I had was some actually heavy-duty axle grease, and it works just fine. That said, you'll also want to clean up these like we did in the first couple of videos. Just make sure they're clean metal and just cover them in grease. One thing we didn't cover, the regulators I was originally cleaning in the video that I did about this, the arms were straight. And I didn't get any video of it, but these ones were bent like crazy. So I had to spend probably a good 45 minutes getting these arms really straight, because you want even pressure on that window as it goes up and down. One other thing we didn't cover in those videos is this spring. And I mean, it was one of my first videos, so I didn't even tell you what it did. What the spring does is it builds tension as you lower the window, so that when you roll the window up, it helps push the window back up. So if you have to replace it, which I had to on both of these on this truck, one was there and the other one was missing, and this truck has always had problems with the windows going up and down smoothly. So what I had to do is I had to find a spring comparable to the original, but there's a trick to putting these springs in here. What matters about these springs that you have to pay attention to is that it has to be oriented correctly, which means when you roll the window down, it's building up tension slightly. You'll feel it. But when you roll the window back up, it's actually helping you push that window right back up through the channel. Now, the orientation is that however the regulator is coming away from the gear, you'll have this little tab facing away from it, right? So this comes out this way, the little tab on the spring goes that way. And I didn't get any video of this, of course, but I found the easiest and safest way to put this on here is to hook this tab here, and this will not line up with this. You have to manipulate it back to fit in that groove. I put a vice grips on probably the first 1/8 of an inch of this tab and bend it back until it catches, and then I push it in and I hold this side down with a screwdriver just to hold it down into this groove while I release the vice grips, and then it should pop right in there. You can take a punch and just like make sure it's seated in there completely, but it's pretty easy. Once you get it in there, it pretty much just stays right there. The other thing about this truck that raises the questions that I had in the first videos is that the window channel, when you put the splicing tape, the linerless splicing tape that we used in lieu of glass setting tape in the first videos, same roll, there's different thicknesses of safety glass. So depending on who you get it from or what sheet of glass you're cutting it from, sometimes the windows will fit loosely and stuff. And so I had some questions like, oh, okay, so if this doesn't fit in there correctly, like if it's still loose, what do I do? And the answer to that is that you just put another layer of the tape on there, and I'll show you that right now. Alright, so here we are. That's on there. That's no good. It's got to be tighter than that. You got to be able to do the Dairy Queen test on this. Just keep laying it on there till it gets tight. Okay, so now it's tight, but now we got to get it on there. So just with a dead blow hammer, it's going to take and pop it down on there. When you're doing this, you're going to want to start from one end and hold tension down in the middle and kind of work your way across. If you start on this end and then you go over this end will pop off and you're just going to be chasing it back and forth. So the easy way to do it is start on one end, get it down, and work the rest of it down. This is like the worst angle to do this video, I'm sorry. Now I'm going to get it more seated in there, but you can tell already you got the Dairy Queen test. You know, you can hold it upside down and it's not falling out of there. This is important, and the reason it's important is that you need this window frame to be able to pull the glass down through the channel without the glass just popping out and just sticking in the window. Okay, now we've got it all seated in there. You got your 2 layers of tape, and we just need to trim it off. Okay, so that window's ready to go in the truck. Alright, so this one is the one that always bears repeating. You got this window. It's coming up. And look at that. See, we got this crack. It's good here in the back. It's in there crooked. So, we've got to get back to the adjustment nut, which is right here. Should be a 1/2 inch. Come back up here, the window. Put the window down a little bit. See, you can see where it's crooked here. So I'm just gonna grab it and set it right. I'll usually get it up underneath there in the carrier. We're gonna do this and see how it works. Tighten this back up. I have to set it down to tighten it. All right, so perfect. Okay, so one last thing I want to mention real quick, and this pertains to the windshield part of your KB glass, is that in the first video I made for this channel, I rebuilt a split windshield. And the thing about the split windshields on these trucks is that there are 3 places where you fasten them together. In the center, there's a little bar that comes up from the lower part of the windshield frame, and as the frame comes together, there's 2 bolts that go into it. But on the sides of the windshield, there's 2 bars that insert that are not actually a part of either side of the frame. They have 4 bolt holes in them. I talked about them and the correct bolt size and the correct bolt head and stuff in the first video. But the thing that I didn't talk about in the first video is the bolts break off in them. And because they're little bolts and it's hard to get them out, and it's most likely that after 70 years they're just going to break off in there. So that leaves you with, do you extract a tiny bolt like that? In my case, I made the bars myself by hand, measured them out precisely, and then drilled them and then tapped them. And it took at least half a day to get it done, just to make sure it was done perfectly correctly and make sure it looked right and everything. Not that anyone can see it from the outside, but just for my OCD. But the great thing about that is that if you're rebuilding one of those windshields, there is a guy in Washington State who makes them now. So there's a man named Jacob Chapin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jacob. He makes these, and he saw the video and he sent me these. And I've been waiting to rebuild a windshield ever since because I'd love to use them. But he's got them measured out exactly correctly. He's got them drilled, he's got them tapped, and this should save you a lot of time. If you are on any of the Facebook groups about these trucks, I'm sure you know who he is. But if not, if he has a website or something, I will put it in the video description. He makes a lot of parts that are hard to find for these KB series of trucks. A lot of it he makes out of stainless, so you don't have to worry about it rusting out. I know he makes the door stops for when you open your door. It'll stop the door from swinging all the way open. He makes the splash pans for the front bumper. He even makes a pattern for the fuel tank, and just it's really helpful to have somebody like that around. So anyway, if you're rebuilding a split windshield on one of these international trucks, Jacob Chapin is a name you'd really want to know. Hope the video was helpful. The thing is about doing these windows, I covered a lot of this stuff in the first videos of this channel. I've organized all these window videos for the KB series into a playlist, and so hopefully you can just go through that whole playlist. And even if you only put glass in one of these trucks one time in your life, if you follow along with those videos, you should be able to knock it out of the park on the first time. So anyway, have a good one. Like and subscribe. Share the videos if you found it helpful with your other truck friends, and I will see you in the next video.